Hey everybody, it's JGB Carlos Peppers, and I know you guys are going to be super excited about watching the last 4 bowl games of the year, excluding the national championship. But this is also a huge weekend for college basketball. 12 games with at least one ranked team in them. So let's get just straight started off the bat. I'm sure you guys have noticed that I didn't post a video for yesterday in the series. Number one, it was New Year's Eve. When everyone finally left, it was like 12:30. And I just didn't really feel like recording videos at that point. Plus, on top of that, there were no ranked matchups, nor Power 5 teams playing. So no really big games were on that day. So I went with I'm just going to skip the day, especially since it doesn't really matter, since I've already locked up a no prank day. But this day is pretty huge, so I'm going to try and get through it and tell you guys which game I think is going to be the best game to pick as an upset. So for 11 o'clock, we have number 11 Creighton at Providence. So Creighton's 7-2, Providence is 7-3. This is a huge game in the Big East. Providence is playing very well right now. A very good basketball team. The Friars are playing really good basketball right now. Their forward Bishop leads the Big East with a 69.7% field goal percentage. It's on Fox, by the way. Creighton started by 4.5 points in this game. This is going to be a really good basketball game because Providence is playing at a high level right now. It's going to be tough to beat them. They're a really great team, and this is going to be an interesting one. 11 o'clock, we also have number 8 Texas taking on number 3 Kansas. Both are sitting with one loss. Texas was 7-1. Kansas at 8-1. Kansas favored by 4.5 points. Unfortunately for Texas, going to Kansas normally just does not work for them. Last 9 times they've traveled to Kansas, it resulted in a loss for them. But like this year, it feels different for this Texas team. This Texas team legitimately feels like a top 10 team, great team. Unfortunately, couldn't get that win against Villanova a few weeks back, but I feel like they have a chance here against Kansas. This is also going to be a great game on ESPN2. I'm really looking forward to it. 11 o'clock, we also have this game. Number 12, Missouri traveling to Arkansas. If you didn't know, Missouri was undefeated heading into this week before traveling to Tennessee on Thursday, absolutely getting their butts whomped. They just absolutely got destroyed by Tennessee. It's kind of what I expected because Missouri showed some weaknesses against Bradley, and definitely Tennessee's going to take advantage of that. Arkansas is also a very good basketball team. So Arkansas is 9-0 if you didn't know. Can't do much better than what Arkansas is doing right now. It's going to be interesting when Arkansas and Tennessee play later on. I think Arkansas is a seriously good team. This game is going to be really good, especially since Arkansas is weirdly, even though they're not ranked, favored by 4.5 in this matchup. 12 o'clock, we have number 2 Baylor taking on Iowa State. Now, if you didn't know, Iowa State is, there's 10 Big 12 teams. They're 10. Iowa State's legitimately the worst team in the Big 12, while Baylor's sitting at 1 in the conference. Kansas at 2, Texas at 3, West Virginia at 4. Kind of the 4 teams you would expect to be up there. Texas Tech is weirdly at the bottom of the conference, even though they have a pretty good record. But Baylor's really good. Baylor's. There's a reason why this is the second biggest spread of the day. Baylor's really good this year. It's really, really good. I think it's one of the best teams. I think the best team in the country, although it's going to be hard to upseed Gonzaga because I don't know where they're going to get a loss from. I bet they lose at least once. But Baylor has a gauntlet to go through, having to play Kansas twice, having to play Texas twice, having to play West Virginia twice, Texas Tech twice, Oklahoma twice, which is going to be a tough team to beat. Kansas State, they're so inconsistent. I thought they got their act together, but I don't know if they had their act together because they almost lost to Omaha. It took a last-second shot to beat Omaha. That should not be the case with Omaha. So Baylor's just a much better team from them. I just don't see the upset potential here. Almost every game I see the upset potential. I don't see the upset potential here. Number 10, Iowa's traveling in number 14, Rutgers. This is a really weird game because Luka Garza is legitimately the best player in the conference, having the most 30-plus point games in the major conferences with 5, and leading all major conferences with 277 points. Garza's been insane this year, but I gotta say, Rutgers is almost impossible to beat at the rack. But it's different this year. If this was like full house rockin' rack, then it'd be hard to pick against the Scarlet Knights here. This is less of the rack that we all know and love, where it's just bouncing. So many people there's no one in the stands this year. Makes it a lot more difficult to be dominant at home, which is how Rutgers was going to make the tournament last year. It's a great team. It's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be interesting. There's serious upset potential here for Rutgers. Number 9, West Virginia at Oklahoma. Now, again, Oklahoma's guard is leading the Big 12 with a 90.5% free throw percentage, which means if Oklahoma's ahead at the end of the game, you want that guy on the line to ice the game out. Honestly, I don't, as many of you know, I don't believe in West Virginia that much, mainly because I don't think they're very good. I don't think they're deserving a top 10 rank. They've beaten some mediocre teams. Like, I don't understand how they're ranked that high, but, you know, it is what it is. Oklahoma's a serious shot at pulling off this upset here, especially since they're weirdly favored by 1.5 points. But as you know, for the rules, they're unranked. West Virginia's top 10. It's still considered an upset pick. So, and we have Oklahoma State sitting at 6-2, traveling to number 13 Texas Tech. Weirdly, Oklahoma State, even though they're at 6-2, is at the bottom of the conference right now. I think they're 0-2 in conference play. Not doing very well in conference play, but have done pretty well so far. Number 13 Texas Tech also is a team I don't think is deserving of that top 15 ranking. Oklahoma State's guard Cunningham leads the Big 12 with 19.4 points per game. The Cowboys are actually a pretty good basketball team that people are forgetting in the Big 12, mainly because it's hard. Because you have four top 10 teams in the Big 12. You have Texas Tech also there. And then if you're going to think about a Big 12 team that's not ranked, you're going to think about Oklahoma, because Oklahoma is, one of the best in the nation, like unranked. I think there's some serious teams that are getting gypped. I think that might make the top 25 next week, and I think it's Oklahoma. I think Maryland's getting gypped. I think they might make it. I think SMU is a definite team that should be in consideration the way they've been playing so far, especially if they beat Houston tomorrow. And NC State is 2-0 in ECC play, and is just being overlooked, even though they're a very good basketball squad. And Clemson, for that matter, is also being overlooked. Florida State and Duke should definitely drop out, in my opinion. Looking great. I think Virginia Tech is one of the better ones, and I think Virginia keeps canceling the games that I think they'll lose in, which really sucks from my point that I don't think Virginia is very good, and I don't think they are. But they keep canceling the ones like Michigan State and Virginia Tech. That would prove me right. So, I don't know. That's disappointing for me. But get back on track. I think Oklahoma State definitely has a chance in this one, although the Texas Tech is favored by 8. I think a lot of people who've been watching the series for a long time know my opinions on Texas Tech. I don't think they're a very good team. I think they've been deemed good because they're Texas Tech, normally good at basketball for the past few years. And I think that's what they've been like. That's what the AP Top 25 is taking into consideration, that they're good already, but I don't think they're good this year. I think we're being judged on a curve, and I don't think that's right. So there's some serious upset potential for Oklahoma State. Purdue at number 15, Illinois. Now, Illinois is favored by 8.5 points, but this is kind of like a must-win game for Purdue. So it's going to be interesting. Purdue's forward Williams leads the Big Ten in rebounds and fouls. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I think Purdue's a very good team this year, but they kind of have to get it together soon, just like Indiana needed to get it together. Luckily, they got the Penn State win. Unfortunately for me, as a Penn State fan, Penn State deserved to win that game if it wasn't from some really poor reffing. Just bad reffing all around. But I think Purdue definitely has a shot here. I think they're a very good basketball team. So definitely going to be an interesting game on the Big Ten Network. 5 o'clock, we have Alabama, which is 6-3, taking on number 7 Tennessee, who are undefeated. It's a very big game for Tennessee. Very big game for Alabama. Alabama wants to really prove themselves as an SEC contender, even though they've lost some really lackluster teams so far. I think it's possible Alabama makes a statement win here. That would be very interesting for the Tennessee Volunteers. I think the Crimson Tide desperately need it. So it's going to be interesting. I also think this could be a possibility for a upset pick. Okay, so number 17, Michigan State, 6-3, traveling to Nebraska. Somehow Michigan State's only favored by 8.5 in this game, which is really weird. It's Nebraska. Like I said this before when they were playing Michigan. It's Nebraska. Big Ten's a gauntlet. It's going to be tough because there are 12 teams in there that has a serious shot at making the playoffs. 13th team is Penn State, and Penn State is legitimately a tough team to beat. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a tough sledding through the Big Ten. But then there's Nebraska. Nebraska should just be the easy W for everyone. If you lose to Nebraska, it's going to be hard because you've got some tough teams that you have to beat, and Nebraska's not one of them. You have to take the easy W here. I don't understand how Michigan State's only favored by 8.5 points. This is one of the few ones where I don't see any upset potential. Nebraska's just plain awful. It's not a good team at all. I understand that Michigan State's 0-3 in the first time in a long time in Big Ten play, but they'll get it. The teams they played is like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northwestern. Like, those are some seriously good teams. Nebraska is not that good. Michigan State lost by 25 points their last outing, which was not good. But I honestly think they're going to win here pretty handily at 7 o'clock. 9 o'clock, we have San Francisco, 7-4, at number 1, Gonzaga. So San Francisco has proven, and Pepperdine for that matter, last year, that they can seriously compete in that conference. Looked really good. Took the Zags to overtime. Honestly, almost won that game. If they had won it, it would have been an interesting championship game. Pepperdine almost did the exact same thing, and it's going to be interesting this year. I think Pepperdine and San Francisco are legitimate contenders for that conference. Again, I don't know why Gonzaga is favored by 19 points here. I think San Francisco, from what I've seen of San Francisco, it's a very good team. It's going to be a tough team to beat. It's really interesting to watch because San Francisco normally is not that good. That head coach has really turned it around at San Fran. It's going to be interesting. I really think this is some serious upset potential for San Francisco, though. Then finally, we have my favorite conference. It's just a joke. Pac-12. Watching the basketball for the Pac-12 is like watching two cats fight in an alleyway over gum. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's like watching two cats fight in an alleyway over gum. It's sad, ridiculous, and honestly makes you want to poke your eyes out. It's horrible to watch. Oregon basketball is not fun to watch. Although I think, to be honest, if I'm going to say the most fun team to watch in the Big 12, the Pac-12, it's got to be Oregon. Oregon's not that much fun to watch, but it's better than watching literally other options. It's like watching Pac-12 basketball is like watching paint dry. It's so boring. Stanford's actually mediocre, if you can believe it. They're not horrible at basketball, especially not by Pac-12 standards. So this is going to be a seriously tightly contested game on ESPNU. Oregon's favored by 5.5 in this one. But I think it's time for Gigi's Pick of the Week. Drum roll, please. I'm going to pick Oklahoma to upset number 9 West Virginia. As I said before, I don't believe in West Virginia. And it's not the, taking the easiest pick of the day. Sure, Oklahoma's here by 1.5 points, but technically if I'm going spread-wise, Arkansas would have been the best pick. But I believe more in Missouri. I think they could get a bounce-back win there than I do in West Virginia. As many of you know my thoughts on West Virginia, I already said in this episode, I think they're an overrated team. I think Oklahoma's underrated. I think they deserve to be top 25. So it's going to be interesting. I think Oklahoma's going to get a signature win here, especially since they're playing at home. Hey everybody, this is GGB Coles Pepper saying adios amigos and go Sooners.